time, I started with money management and some of the things that we can do as individuals to transition into wealth management. But before I do that, I want to use a biblical reference because we have 8 individuals on the call here tonight, including myself, and I just admitted Len Cameron as well. But I wanted to use Matthew 25:14 to 30. Very common text. Welcome, Len. Very common text. But the principle of the matter is everyone on this call will have different resources to manage based on their family that they came from, their education, their work, and inheritance. It doesn't matter. However, the most important thing is how well we manage these resources. And we know it's mandated by God to give the best return on his resources, specifically the money that we're talking about here today. So I want to talk about money management. I spoke about, wealth management this evening. I spoke about money management the last time, and we referenced a budget. Within that budget, and I'll pull up a few screens here for the benefit of everyone. For those of you that are very familiar with this, everyone should be using a budget, if not on a monthly basis, at least referencing it, at least on a quarterly basis. What it allows you to do is to really take stock of what's coming in and what's going out. 1 second here. The goal is first of all, to prioritize. Your savings should always come before your expenses. And the amount that you should save that I referenced the last time is a minimum of 10%. And you'll see why when I get into wealth management. So when it comes to money management, you want to set aside at least 10% of your net income. Manage your expenses within certain ratios, which are extremely important because if we don't manage the ratios between these various categories that you see here, be it housing, utilities, transportation, food, recreation, and education, we will never have enough money to transition into wealth management. We cannot get blood from a stone, right? So the goal is, regardless of how much you're making on this call, be it $30,000, 50,000, 100,000, that's not the point. I have clients that, like I said, that are making 30, 40,000 and those that are making into 6, 7 figures, but I address them the same, that we want to get you to an end goal, right? So the first thing is, what you want to do is understand that savings come first. The second thing you want to understand is that percentages, as I mentioned. And then the third thing is, now that I've saved this money, what do I do with it? Okay. So as we go on to page 4 of this review, this is called your net worth calculation or your balance sheet. And someone can even answer, how many of you on the call actually work with a net worth calculator or a balance sheet to determine your assets and your liabilities? And you can unmute yourself. How many of you are familiar with this document? A net worth calculator or balance sheet?
Yes.
Anyone?
Yes, I am, Lavardo, but there was one quick question. Save 10%, just clarification. Net or gross income, what did you say?
Gross is better because you're saving more, but at the minimum, net.
Net, okay.
Because when you're alluding to gross, that's before taxes.
That's right.
And employer deductions and all those type of expenses. So if you're taking out 10% of your gross, that's essentially going to be between 15, sometimes 20% of your net, depending on your tax bracket. So, but at a minimum, 10% of your net. Okay.
Okay.
Your specific question.
I'm taking. Sorry, someone else was saying something.
You asked if I use this calculator I have as well. Something very similar to it.
Okay, so good.
I'm learning. As a young person, I didn't really see the need of working on a spreadsheet. So I just usually whatever is in my account, I just put towards saving, and I use it as a growth, not as a net.
Okay. Whatever is left in your account after you pay your expenses?
Yes.
Okay. I want you to change that position, because in times of plenty, that can work. But in times of lean or now, if you pay your expenses first, if you now underemployed or now unemployment insurance or the CRB, you cannot save because nothing will be left over. As a smart saver, you always want to set aside your savings first, of course, tithe and offering, but savings thereafter, and make the expenses work, even if you have to get rid of them or reduce them drastically. Okay? So that's really the premise. So, and the reason why I said that is, I liken savings to a good athlete. In North America, one of the most popular sports might be soccer, football, or basketball. And if I were to ask you guys, what's your favorite sport? Football. American football?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you're a good athlete, and I said, Orlando, go out on the field and play the game.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're a good athlete, some individuals will go on there on offense or defense and run up and down. Depending on your athleticism, you might have some level of success.
Mm-hmm.
But had you learned the rules of the game first, with your athleticism, you would be a better athlete. When it comes to money and money management, so many of us think we can just do it because I'm educated in a certain field. Well, I have my degree here, I have my degree there. So why shouldn't I be able to manage my money that's coming in? I think I can figure this thing out. But if you think of the time that we put into our current vocation or career, between grade 1 and 12, it's like 25,000 hours. And if you go on to undergrad and postgrad, think of the years that it took you to get to a point to have your current job if you're gainfully employed, just to make the money. But look at the time we spent in training to manage the money. It's crazy. We expect to be good managers, but we have no experience. And historically, it might vary amongst the men on the call. Most individuals have not learned their financial literacy from home. You probably observe certain things from your parents, but I know even from my generation, the adults did most of the stuff. They kept it from kids. Most of them might not, they probably didn't know what to teach you in detail. So you became an adult, and all of a sudden you're working, or you got into a relationship and got married, and now you're leading a home or your personal life, and now you're winging it because I'm intelligent in one area, but there's not a direct correlation when it comes to money management. So the first thing I always tell individuals is, regardless of what you're doing, learn the rules of the game. Once you learn the rules of the game in terms of the knowledge, that would help your understanding. The second level would be, you have to assess how much you know from time to time. All of us went to grade school, I'm assuming. And if you ask the average student today, how well do you understand this subject? He or she might say, well, I'm good. But when you get a quiz, a final exam, or whatever, that result might be totally different based on the assessment. Many of us have never looked through our numbers or had a professional look through our numbers, say, you know what? Based on what you said you want to accomplish and where you should be, you're either on track or you're not on track. So what I want to pass on to everyone here is, there's a process on how to be successful when it comes to wealth management. The first thing is understanding the game. And now for the next 5 minutes, I will go through all of the various areas as it pertains to wealth management and how it applies to your various goals. When it comes to wealth management, as we look right here on this balance sheet, there are certain type of investments we call non-registered investments. And these are typically investments such as mutual funds. So a mutual fund is when you're buying a pool of investments, typically 10 or more, so you're diversifying your portfolio. So for example, if you have $1 to invest and you want to buy fast food stocks or invest in fast food companies, that $1 will buy Kentucky, McDonald's, Burger King, and several others. So you're now diversifying. So if one company is not doing well, maybe the 9 others are doing well. Similar to that are stocks. You're investing $1, but that dollar is going directly into one company only. You can get escalated growth, but if that company is not performing well, you can also have a significant decline. So mutual funds have a built-in hedge for you to ensure that the probability of you growing your money might be more faster or more consistent, I should say, in the long run. However, you need a bit of both depending on your risk tolerance. Segregated funds are similar to mutual funds, but you purchase them through an insurance company and they guarantee your original deposit. So for example, individuals that probably retired or will be retiring in 2020, if one person had $250,000 in mutual funds or stocks, same thing, and if the market is down 20%, their returns in 2020 would be 20% less than they had counted on. If you had that same money in a segregated fund at least 10 years ago, your original deposit will still be the same. So they will give you this complete amount of money. So segregated funds, the MERs or the management fees are higher, but they guarantee your original deposit and some of them even the growth on your funds as well. So once again, you have to choose which ones you prefer depending on the goal, be it retirement, buying a house, sending your kids to college or university, it doesn't matter. These are just tools. But if you're not saving the 10% plus, you can't even use these tools to grow your money. GICs, unless you are in retirement, gentlemen, or acquiring a property or an asset within 1 year, you don't really need to use GICs because they give you the lowest return on your money. The average person that have money in a bank, regardless of the bank in Canada, if you just deposit a lump sum in that account, the default that they will offer to you are GICs, guaranteed income certificate. The rate of returns most of the time right now is less than 1%. And if you're not careful, you're leaving your money there and it's not growing. Inflation is 3%, meaning the cost of living is going up by an average of 3% on an annual basis. So if your money is not growing by 3% plus, you're actually poorer than you thought you were. So it's important to always have a level of growth in your portfolio. And then there are bank accounts on other non-registered investments and bonds. What bonds are loans. So you heard about federal bonds, provincial bonds, municipal bonds. If the government wants to build a road or a highway, they can come to the Canadian public and say, hey, we want to raise $50 million. We'll offer bonds to you that are going to mature in 5 years. And after 5 years, we're going to pay you 2%. So a bond is a loan to a company or a government or whomever for a certain period of time with a certain amount of guaranteed interest, okay? They're typically more conservative in nature. So the bigger the entity, the lower the return. So if I have a federal bond from the government, say for example, the government of Canada, the rate of return might be 2% because the likelihood of the government of Canada defaulting on their loan is low. If I got that same bond from the municipality of Scarborough, my interest rate will be higher. They will give me more interest on my money because they are smaller and the likelihood of them defaulting is higher than the federal government. So it depends on who you're getting a bond from. The more risk you take, the higher the return, okay? So that's it when it comes to non-registered investments. Any questions when it comes to non-registered investments? These are investments that you tend to pay capital gains on. And before I open the floor for this section, capital gains is the growth on your original money, and then they divide it by 50%. So for example, I invested $100,000 today. It grew to 150,000. If I decided to withdraw everything, the government will not charge me taxes on the whole $150,000. They will charge me taxes on the difference between my original investment of 100,000 and 50,000, so 150,000, so that's 50,000, according to my tax bracket, divided in half, sorry, which will be 25,000 according to my tax bracket. So that's the taxes you would typically pay on non-registered funds. Any questions when it comes to non-registered investments, gentlemen?
Just one question. In regards to segregated funds, are the rates of return pretty similar to that of a mutual fund? Or but is it, Matt, you said the MREs are higher, the actual payment to your agents are higher? How does that balance off? And if I were going into retirement within the next 3 to 5 years, should I be thinking about shifting money from a mutual fund and over into a segregated fund?
Good question,
Registered
Len.
or non-registered, that's just irrelevant.
Okay, good question. So in layman terms, the rate of returns between mutual funds and segregated funds in a good economic situation is relatively the same because they're still investing in the same companies. The reason why the MER, or the management expense ratio, will be higher on the seg funds because of two main reasons. One, you have more professional, not more professional management, you have the guarantee of your original deposit. For many people, that might not seem important, but if you think about it, you will be saving over all these years to replace hopefully 70% of your pre-retirement income so that you can retire. If all of a sudden a big chunk of that is lost because the market is down and you don't have enough time to work to replenish it, that means retirement is not in the picture anymore, or you have to work beyond 65 just to maintain your standard of living. So guaranteeing your original principal is extremely worth it to me, even though I sell both. If a client has a higher net worth, to me, it really doesn't matter where you go. If you're what I call middle income to lower income, you need all the security that you can get. And so therefore, I will offer that to you first. However, it's really up to the client what they want to do. And as you go into retirement, you want to become more conservative. So the younger you are, you should be more aggressive. The closer you are to retirement, you should become more conservative because you need the money now to live on. I hope I answered your question, Len. Len?
Yes, I did. No problem. Thank you.
Okay.
Can I have just a quick question under the non-registered? Now, to get a stock, would you, in layman terms, would you need a stock broker to get a stock?
No, there are platforms where you as an individual can go directly and purchase stocks on your own, depending on your ability and comfort level. Some
Okay.
individuals use a stockbroker,
Okay.
or some people use a financial advisor, depending on your comfort level of investments and the value that you think professional money management can get you over doing stuff yourself.
All right.
All right. So it all depends. So the best way I would say it, Pastor, is this. I went to university, but I will never homeschool my children.
Yes.
Not because I'm dumb. I might not have the patience. I might not have the time. So it's not a matter of ability. It's just whether it's worth it to me.
Mm-hmm.
I prefer to put them even in private school and I go out and work and make X amount of money, pay for private school and be all good, rather than me staying home full time and doing all of that. So it really depends on the individual. Sometimes you might have the ability. Some individuals are actually in the industry and they still have an advisor.
Mm-hmm.
right? So it really doesn't matter. It really depends on how you see yourself doing it. Is it worth it? And your time as well.
Okay, thank you.
When it comes to registered investments, these are all acronyms, but I'll try to make them pretty clear. Registered retirement savings plan, it's typically a tool that the government uses, that we can use, where we can save 18% of our income into a registered account. A registered account meaning the government is aware of it and it has certain benefits. It's tax deferred, meaning while you're putting money into that account, you wouldn't pay any taxes on it and you're going to get a tax return. However, sometime in the future, you have to pay the taxes back. When you make a regular withdrawal, by the age of 71, it has to be converted into a retirement income fund, which is the RRIF, Registered Retirement Income Fund. And the government will now tell you what percentage has to be withdrawn from that fund every year so that they can get their taxes over time. If you die before depleting that account, your estate by your executor will have to file a final tax return by January of the year after you pass and ensure that all the taxes that were due to the government from your investments or anything else is actually paid once they probate your will. Okay, so be it dead or alive.
They still got you.
They still got
Be
it.
it dead or alive, gentlemen. You got to pay it back, all right? It's just
Wow.
deferred. All right, so it's a good tool if you use compound interest over time, it can really add up. But some people prefer non-registered over registered, but really at the end of the day, it depends on what you're saving it for. It's a good tool. The LIRA, which is a locked-in registered account, essentially, for example, you're working for a company, it has a pension plan, you leave that company to join another company. Because you leave company A or you're fired, they no longer have a contractual agreement with you, but you had a pension plan in place. They cannot pay you that pension plan right away. So they're going to say to you, hey, we're going to give you the option to transfer this pension plan to company B if they're offering a pension plan, or if they're not, you have to transfer it into a LIRA. You cannot touch this money until a certain point in time in the future because it was intended for your retirement. The earliest you can access that money is at age 55, right? But essentially, it's still locking in the money until you hit a certain age. So we talk about the RRSP, the LIRA, the RRIF, which is the Registered Income Fund, which an RSP is converted into, and then a LIF, a Lifetime Income Fund. Basically, the LIRA is the same thing. The money that was locked into your LIRA has to be converted into an income stream, and then that income stream is a LIF, L-I-F, that you see there. So basically, an RSP is converted into a RIF, a LIRA is converted into a LIF. Just terms, but essentially, you have to start taking income from the money that you invested. That's essentially what it is. Tax-free savings account, this started in 2009. If you haven't put $1 in your tax-free savings account, you have about $69,600 that you can actually put in. This is after-tax money, meaning money that you receive after being paid. So the money that you put in there and the growth will not be taxed. So it's a good vehicle that you can use. Every Canadian over the age of 18, so if you have children over the age of 18, encourage them to use their tax-free savings account as well. You can use it very good for an emergency fund because there are no tax implications when you take it out. Down payment for a house, you're buying a business, you just want to do something, supplement your retirement income in the future, it doesn't matter. It's an excellent tool and you have almost $70,000 of room in there. If you have a significant other, that's another tax-free savings account that you can capitalize on as well, okay? So take full advantage. If the government is offering you something, take it. The reason why they started the tax-free savings account is, according to the mortality rates, the baby boomers, and hopefully nothing personal here. Canadians are living longer due to medical advancement. However, after 65, most people are not putting money into the tax system, but they're taking from CPP and old age security. So, according to these numbers, people are living longer. People that are even coming into the workforce, even though they may have more degrees, they have more precarious jobs. They don't have stable jobs. So they cannot contribute as much into the plan. So the plan is not as sustainable. So they're predicting, I'm in my mid-40s. By the time as I reach 65, 67, CPP might not be around in its existing state. It's almost impossible to fund it at this rate. So therefore, Lavardo, you have to save more for yourself. And that's really where the tax-free savings account came in, because they're downloading more of the savings to the individual rather than from the government.
So I have a question.
Sure.
I just recently got sick 3 years ago, right? So the government had offered me a RRD.
RDSP?
Yeah. So it should I be taking it, or should I pass off to putting money into my Canadian pension plan? Because I've been trying to battling if I should be putting money towards this one or saving for my Canadian pension plan, because just in case in future when I turn 65, at least I have something to fall off on.
Good question, Eddie. In an ideal situation, I would say take advantage of both. And I'll explain to you why. The Canadian pension plan, under normal circumstances, if you're gainfully employed, your employer would take about, I think it's 5.05% from your salary and match it, send it off to the Canadian pension plan. They will invest it and it will grow over time. So that when you reach the earliest 60, you can take early retirement, but if you do, you lose 30% permanently. If you wait until 65, you get the full thing. Because you had a disability, what's also available to you is the registered disability savings plan. If you are a low to middle income Canadian, it's one of the best things since sliced bread. Reason being, they have a 3-to-1 matching. So if you put in $1,500 per year, they will match that 3-to-1. Where else you're gonna get a 300% return on your money with no risk? So it's an excellent tool. I would find room in my budget to contribute to the RDSP as well as the CPP, because you don't know how long God is going to give you life, and you don't know the quantity or the quality of your health, but prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But there are two excellent tools. If you need help restructuring your budget, reach out to me on an individual basis, and I'll see what I can do in terms of helping you prioritize so that you can save. Pastor De Silva?
Yes, two quick questions. Number one, the TFSA, you mentioned that the Canadian government opened it up. Most people have about 70 if you've not added money to it. Is
Yes.
there ever a time when an individual should take out a loan, let's say for the 70 to invest it? Is the investment interest that you would gain, is it more than what you would pay in the interest of that loan? Is there ever a time to take a TFSA loan? That's question number one. And question number two, when is the sweet spot on the RRSP? Because as you said, you're basically deferring your taxes. Does it get to a point where it's dangerous having too many of them, too much RRSP, because you're just pushing the tax payment down the road? Is there a sweet spot?
Okay, very good question. So I'll answer the last question first in terms of the RRSP. The RRSP or the RRSP is a tax deferral plan to help you to get enough retirement income. It's just one leg. So for example, if you have a pension plan from work, and you worked in Canada over the age of 18 for a significant period of time, you might be getting the CPP and the old age security as well.
Right.
If you're one of those individuals that have an employer plan, plus you lived in Canada for a while, you need less when it comes to your RSP.
Mm-hmm.
However, only 30% of Canadians have a pension plan through work. So that means most people can never save enough per se when it comes to their RSP. However, the best time to take money out of the RSP are three or four times. One, if you're a first-time home buyer, you can use the first-time home buyer.
Yes.
When you take it out, you don't pay any taxes. They give you 15 years to pay it back.
Mhm.
Secondly, it might be in a time like this. You might be unemployed. Your tax bracket is lower. So when you put it in, you probably was fully gainfully employed, and assuming you made $60,000 then. Now you're unemployed, you're only getting the government benefit of $2,000 a month, $24,000 a year. This is a good time to take money out of your RSP, because even if you take out 10,000, you're now only in a 34,000 tax bracket compared to 50,000. So you pay the government back less in taxes, right? So it's a plus and minus. You want to put it in when you're making the most and taking out when you earning less.
Right.
The next time is if you're going back to school to continue your education, the lifetime learning plan. They don't charge you any taxes. You take it out and they give you 10 years to pay it back.
Okay.
And then the next thing is in retirement. The point in which you now calculate your employer pension, if you have one, your government pension, along with your personal savings. And the goal is not to be rich. If you get rich, it's fine, but the goal is to replace at least 70% of your pre-retirement income, and assuming your expenses are at least 70% or lower, and then you can retire. Because retire to me is nothing to do with age. It's a point in which I don't have to work another day in my life, and I can pay my bills for as long as God give me life. That's
Right.
retirement. And then with the tax-free savings account, sorry, I think you asked me a question.
Yes, yes.
Can you rephrase the question again so I can address it?
So the question is there ever an advantage of taking out a loan? Is the loan, what the interest on the loan, is it going to beat the interest on the loan payment?
Okay, good question. So an investment loan in general, you have
Yes.
tax-free savings account, other non-registered, and RSPs. If you're borrowing to invest, personally speaking, objectively speaking, it's not a bad thing. The reason why it's a good thing this way, just say your overall goal is for 50,000. You're thinking of a $50,000 loan.
Mm-hmm.
If you're setting aside $200 a month, how long would it take you with the principal and the growth to get to 50,000? $200 a month, $2,400 a year, X amount of years, it'll take forever to get there. How the average person is conservative. However, if you take that same $200, I can get you within 2 days, $50,000 investment loan to put in either in your RSP or non-registered. So, and then you just allow that $200 to pay either the principal and interest on that loan, or some people pay the interest only. The reason why they do the interest only, because the interest is also tax deductible. The benefit of it is, Pastor, you have 50,000 growing right away.
Mm-hmm.
And over the years with the compound, you'll always be a person who save incrementally. So starting off with a lump sum or getting to that point as fast as possible will always achieve more than someone that does it slowly and steady. Yes,
This
sir.
is Len. I just want to challenge you a little bit on the 70% of pre-retirement income.
Sure.
Including in your pre-retirement income are another 10% for savings. Like your expenses are so much higher when you're approaching retirement than it is actually when you are retired. Is 70% just a conservative number, or is that what over time that number has been tested?
Very good question. This 70% has been tested, but there's a caveat to that, and I was going to elaborate on that. 70% is sufficient if you got rid of a lot of your debts that you had. If you're mortgage free, the mortgage is typically 30 to 40, sometimes 50% of someone's income. So if you paid off your mortgage before you retired, your income need is less. If your children, depending on your family planning, are now through college or university prior to age 65, that's probably another expense is now ordered away. Of course, every family is going to be different, but if only you got rid of a mortgage, if you had one prior to retiring, you only need about 70% of your pre-retirement income. The more the better, don't get me wrong, but that will ensure that you can sustain what was going on before. You never stop saving. So saving, you will save until you die simply because you never spend everything that comes in. You always want to leave a reserve on an emergency fund just to calculate for other things. Eddie, I don't know if your hand is still up or Pastor De Silver. I noticed you guys hands
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry. Let me take it down.
Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, but Len, no one situation is the same, but we have to establish benchmarks as a good practice. And if you're at 70% with being mortgage free, you're good. If you're now renting, then your income need is still the same, regardless of your age, right? So
Okay.
home ownership has its value if you prepay your mortgage before 65.
All right, great, thank you.
You're welcome. In this category of registered plans, also pension plans. I mentioned only 30% of Canadians have a true pension plan, and that's called a defined benefit plan. I'm going to keep it simple, but they take typically your 5 best earning years according to a formula due to years of service, typically a minimum of 25 to 30 years, you get full retirement. However, that's not everything you need. That's typically 65%, 70% if you're lucky of what you need in retirement. So you always need CPP, old age security, and your personal savings. Because some clients may say, I have a good pension plan. Why do I need to save with you? Why do I need to invest? Because even if you retire early, like nurses, teachers, civil servants in their mid-50s, if you only have 65% of your income, unless you're mortgage free, that's not enough money to live on. And you cannot take CPP until age 60. And if you do take it at 60, you're losing 30% permanently. So you really want to wait until 65 to get your CPP. So you need your personal investments to bridge you along the way. And then your group plans as well. Some people have group RRSPs, profit sharing plans, all those type of stuff. Once again, as you can see, there are a lot of boxes to check. That's why you want to save at least 10%, because these are various areas that we have to save towards. And if you have children, gentlemen, there's something called college or university. And if you want to help them towards that, that's another major investment that you have to put towards as well to really take full advantage of. If you put in $210 a month, the government will match 20% of your investments. And we also do RESP loans as well too, for individuals that cannot contribute the most. So for example, you can only afford $100 a month. After 1 year of doing that, I can get you an investment loan to match your $100, and you don't pay an ounce of interest until your child goes to college. We defer all the payments until they go to college or university. Meanwhile, you have more money invested and you're getting 20% from the government as well. So my job is to help you to work smarter, not harder. All right, but you have to save first.
What's the interest like on the RESPs?
The RESP loans, you don't pay any interest, but I think when you do pay it, it's like right now it's like 4% thereabout.
Okay.
But if you think of the growth you're going to get over the years, and you can use your original money from the RESP to pay off the interest that you would have paid and let your child use the difference. But in the meanwhile, you're getting more growth on the money plus 20% from the government. So anytime you can get free, efficient money, take advantage of it. Yes, Pastor?
I just want to follow up on this comment right here. Orlando, I have 3 kids, and I was able to send my oldest daughter to school because as soon as she was born, there was somebody in the hospital who signed me up with the RESP, and both of my younger children have it. And it has been a blessing because as it has been said, you're getting free money from the government.
Yep. Excellent, excellent. That's the way to do it. And most of the time you get money from the government anyhow, because you have children. Take that same money and reinvest it and get more money on top of it. All right. So there are many tools that are in our toolbox, but we just have to use those tools and use compounding to our advantage. The next asset, sorry.
I was just gonna encourage Orlando. If you got 3 boys, 3 universities to pay for or to help them with, the RESP is a great tool. I used it for both of my kids. Depends on their field of study. The money didn't run out for Megan. It was enough. But my son is in engineering. The money gone real quick, man. So you got to be careful where they end up, where they go to school. So take your time.
Len, can I ask a question? And that is, you're able to port that. Aren't you able to port it between both kids, though? Let's say your son hypothetically says, hey, I want to go to community college, you say, for university. Aren't you able to port that leftover stuff to, let's say, another sibling who wants to go to university?
It depends.
It depends.
Yeah, there are rules around it. You got to be careful.
You can set up a family plan depending on the gap between your children. So if one doesn't use it, it can be ported to the other one. Or you can have individual plans that can allow you even to port it to yourself, to your individual RRSP, if your child gets a full scholarship. For example, they don't need it. They don't decide to go to university or whatever. So there are options on the back end, but it varies from company to company. So you want to focus on the fine print as well to know your out strategy. You want to know your exit strategy. Take advantage of the RESP deferred loans. Not every institution does it, gentlemen. Closing that gap and having that money compounded over a period of time, and you only have to pay it back at the end, makes a huge difference. All right, so look into it. Capital residence. We all know in Canada, real estate is one of the largest vehicles that people use to create wealth, be it their primary residence. Some people actually buy a secondary residence and rent it out, other property or land, or even start a business. However, if you don't have a habit of saving, you cannot even acquire a home as a down deposit and maintain it, or a secondary property. So the habit of saving is the fulcrum from which everything else is launched. So that's why I always go back to money management. If you cannot save and save enough, you cannot check all the boxes. And what's going to happen over time, you're going to be way behind. All right. So the tools are there, the goals are there, but we need that saving. And then also there are other assets. If you prepaid it, furniture, be it antique or regular furniture or vehicle. And then the other thing that is not mentioned here, there are other investments like gold, other commodities that people invest in, and various things, antiquities. But really at the end of the day, you look at all of your assets, and then you subtract your liabilities. Your mortgage. Not everyone can buy a house cash. So we take out a loan for 25 years, typically, that renews every 3 to 5 years, depending on it. Gentlemen, most people, if they stay in their house outside of a crazy market, only break even. Whatever money you borrow from the bank, you're going to pay back approximately 2.5 times that amount. So it's a good savings / investment, unless people buy and sell, buy and sell, buy and sell. And there's timing involved in that. So a mortgage was what I call a secured loan. And it's a good thing because some people are afraid of loans. And I always tell people, you're taking out a loan, you're taking out a mortgage, so why you can't take out an investment loan? You're just not living in the asset or anything like that. So it's the same premise. Car loans. We all know a car is a depreciating liability. We all needed to get back and forth, but ensure that you do it within your ratios. It's very important. The average car will cost you at least $800 per month if it's a new vehicle, at a minimum. And if you take the average net income of $3,200 per month, that's almost a third to a quarter of your income is going just in transportation. It's very important to keep transportation in check because it's payments, it's gas, it's maintenance and insurance. Keep it in check.
Lavardo,
Yes.
you went over the mortgage thing really quickly.
Okay.
Just a piece of advice for those who are young and early in their mortgages. Um, there are things that you can do to pay down your mortgage a little quicker. One of
Okay.
the things that I found very useful is instead of paying it once a month, accelerate your payments either
Bi-weekly.
twice a month or weekly, and you
Mhm.
drop your amortization down to 17
Yeah.
years right off the top.
Mhm.
And the other thing is if you're able to get even a shorter mortgage and you pay off a little quicker, once you balance that book, that first time you see that you're paying just as much principal as interest, it's nothing better, and you start getting all excited and you start paying off your actual loan. So do what you can to shorten that amortization period, and then you can come out ahead on your mortgage.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that point, Len. I'm sorry I ran over that. Like Len
You know,
said, if you pay bi-weekly compared to monthly with the same amount, you cut off that 4 to 6 years. In addition to which, as soon as you have 20% equity in a property, you can turn it into a home equity line of credit. And by converting it into a home equity line of credit, you essentially can cut off another 4 or 5 years. So with the same outlay, one person can take 25 years to pay off a mortgage. Someone can take 15 years with the same money.
Lavardo,
Yes.
I'd like to follow up on what Len was saying, and that is my wife and I, we did anniversary payments.
Yes, the
In other
lump sum.
words, and we were able to knock 12 years, 12, 13 years off of our mortgage by making lump sum payments on anniversary dates.
Mhm. Excellent. And that's another tool as well, gentlemen. So we gave you 3 tools: lump sum payments, bi-monthly payments, as well as soon as you have enough equity in the property, you can go to your primary bank. If they don't do it, another lender will do it for you. If you have good credit and income, a home equity line of credit. Okay, so these are tools in which you can cut down your time drastically. Okay, and then there are other debts: credit cards, guarantees, commercial liabilities. When it comes to increasing your net worth, gentlemen, if you have equity in a property, don't be afraid to refinance, especially now that interest rates are low. Rather than paying credit cards at 19.9%, personal loans or whatever, you can also refinance with the same discipline, roll it into the mortgage. You're paying a lesser monthly outlay, and that difference that you're not paying now in interest, you put it back into your mortgage as additional payments. So in other words, paying off debts at a lower interest rate is better than paying various interest rates all over the place. But you would have to have equity within your property to exercise that option. I've seen people have 60, 70% equity in their property and still paying credit cards out here, still paying all this kind of stuff because they're afraid to what they call extend their mortgage. All right, so there are tools that are out there. At the end of the day, gentlemen, your net worth on an annual basis, you want to see that it's increasing. The various amount of assets that I mentioned here, be it non-registered, registered, capital assets, or other assets, you want those numbers growing with the amount that you're putting in, as well as the various rates of return that you're getting. So you need to understand your risk tolerance, where we ask you as financial advisors, what do you feel about investments, your knowledge, your length of term, and all these type of things, so that you can get the returns that you need. When it comes to your debts, you want to ensure that systematically you are decreasing them over time, so that as you increase your assets, your debts are going down, so your net worth will be increasing. That's the goal when it comes to your balance sheet, and you want to check it on an annual basis so you can see you're trending in that direction. If you're in debt now, don't be afraid. If you're not saving now, don't be afraid. If you're willing to make the effort to restructure your life, to prioritize and keep your debts and expenses within a certain percentage ratio, over time, you too can be successful when it comes to managing the resources that God has blessed you with, so that you can be a blessing to yourself, those you have responsibility for, or even generations to come that you can leave via inheritance or whatever. Any general questions? I just wanted to cover the understanding of, at a basic level, the type of investments, but really the next step is assessing one's situation one-on-one with a professional so you can know where you are in terms of the various goals. And if there is a gap, how soon can you close that gap so that you can be
I do have a question. I think this has been an excellent presentation. And, you know, throughout the Bible, we are counseled that we have to consider the cost before building something. Now, here's my concern. Lest we replicate what happened in Cyprus years ago. The Canadian government, could you explain that? We're talking about building wealth. But let's say the markets crash, COVID comes back and it's a nightmare. Aren't you only guaranteed so much of your investment by the Canadian government? Can you speak to that?
Okay. You're talking about CDIC or deposits. So
Yes.
even at your local bank, BMO, TD, RBC, it doesn't matter. They only guarantee $100,000 out of what you have in deposits.
Is that per bank or is that tied to your SIN number? Is it per bank or is it the collective or wherever your money is?
Institution. Per
Per
institution.
institution?
Per institution.
Okay.
So that's why some people will have money at TD, at BMO, whatever, so that at least they have that cap protected. However, there are protections built in, as I mentioned, with the segregated funds, right? So there are ways in which you can hedge yourself. Even in downturns, Pastor, your returns may not be what you want it to be, but you're at least saving the money, so you have that principal growing. So there will be an index, there will be a flux when it comes to your return. But even in bad times, and believe it or not, during times as such, I encourage people to invest more unless you are currently in retirement or about to retire within the next year, because all of the investments are on sale. They are now down. When it's the best time to buy, you buy low. When it's the best time to sell, you sell high. But you need the time to allow it to recover to get back on the other side. So anyone that's really 5 years away from retirement, or if you have the net worth, you're in retirement, this is the best thing since sliced bread. If you have the disposable income. So I don't panic regardless of markets. If you follow the markets, people went from being millionaires to billionaires in 2020. Because everyone that was losing everything, they just bought it up at discount.
Can you, Lavardo, can you speak a little bit about my investor? He's forever putting, if I give him a lump sum of money, like some people are in sales, like I'm in sales.
Yes.
So, you know, I could be dry for many months and all of a sudden I'm flush. I get a pile of money. And before my wife can buy more furniture, I put it in an investment quickly. And so, but he doesn't like to put it all in at once. He likes to bleed it in a little bit at a time.
Yes.
Can you explain to the rest of the group the advantage of bleeding it into my mutual funds and my RRSPs a little bit at a time instead of all at one time?
Excellent point, Len. That's what we call dollar cost averaging. So for example, over time, the value of an equity or a stock, let's use stock, will fluctuate. So today it might be worth $1. Tomorrow it might be worth $1.10. The next day it might be worth 90 cents. So the premise is, as Len alluded to, rather than putting the lump sum in today and you bought everything at $1, had you put in a portion today when it's at $1, a portion tomorrow when it's at 90 cents, you bought more volume with the same money. So with dollar cost averaging is, rather than put in $10,000 lump sum, we would say to you, in other words, put in $1,200 every month, so that you want to capture things when they're down. You're going to capture some when they're normal, some when they're down, and some when they're up. So when you average it all out, you bought more units for the same money. So you get a better bang for your buck. In other words, if you look at a clothing store, when something comes out brand new, it's at its highest point. Maybe a month later, it may be a little discount. And then in 2 months, it might be on clearance. One person can go in day one and buy that same product. One person can buy it a month later, or one person can buy it in clearance, the same product. But depending on when you buy it, you got a better bang for your buck. So that's what we call bleeding in. We systematically put it in, or some people time the market, and when it's down, they dump it in manually, or they make it automatic. On a certain day of the month, 1st and the 15th, for example, they put in X amount of money that you set aside already to invest. But over time, it has proven to give you the best bang for your buck on average.
Thank you so much, Lavardo. I don't know if there's any other questions. Maybe you can just let us know how we can get in contact with you. I know that you've done many presentations at churches, in groups, in regions. How can people get in touch with you?
Good question. I'm going to pull it up, my contact information right here. The name of my company is called Canadian Smart Saver. This is my contact information, as you would see here on the screen. I offer financial services, as we listed here, all investments and insurance, be it registered, non-registered, pension plans, you name it, employee benefits. I also do financial assessments where you can determine where you are at this moment, help you to establish goals, and help you to bridge that gap. Or I do information webinars on different topics as well. But I'm a financial consultant and compliance officer. I've been in the space now for about 17 years in Canada, 20 years altogether, including the Bahamas. But yeah, my job is at the end of the day to help you to become successful in the most efficient manner by working smarter, not harder. Thus the name Canadian Smart Saver.
And I love the title, the Money and Honey series.
And this is a series that I have coming. I changed the date because I wanted to bring together couples, because sometimes couples just don't talk about it and say, you know what, that relationship between money and honey. So this series, if you guys are on the email, this is what I'm putting together right now and trying to roll it out with my perspective over being married 20 years. What I've learned professionally and personally, and some of the best practices I think we all can benefit from.
And you know, that is the number one reason why couples divorce is finances. So
yes,
truly appreciate your work in this area.